Now then. No, that's not right. Now then. Now then.
I think your first one was right.
Now then. Welcome back, Saddos, to another episode, the final episode of the current series of the Sitcom Archive Deep Dive Overdrive with me, Eggs Benedict.
And me, Alison Barton-Simmons.
How are you, El? You all right?
I'm very well, thank you. Yes, I am. It's it's a Sunday, so it's all good. Bank holiday weekend.
Oh, is it? Oh, you see.
Yeah.
What bank holiday is it? May?
Oh, I don't know.
Early May. We don't get that one. But we do get the Queen's birthday off, which I may have told you before, even though you don't.
Do we not? I think we get extra... Oh, we get Jubilee holidays. Extra Jubilee holidays this year.
Yeah, we get Queen's birthday every year, but I don't think you do unless you're a civil servant in the UK, do you?
Oh, right, okay. No, I don't think we do here.
It's daft. I mean, when I applied for citizenship, I had to swear allegiance to the Queen. I've never done that when I lived in Britain. It's nonsense.
Crackers, isn't it?
Yeah, I know. It's mad. But there you go.
Did you have to put a crown on?
Yeah.
Salute the flag and...
And to get dressed up like King Rollo and parade around.
King Rollo! With little tiny legs.
Yep. New Zealand's a funny place. So we're on to the final episode of our deep dive into Dear John, which always makes us sad when we come to the end of a run, doesn't it?
It does. I've really enjoyed going through Dear John again. I've thoroughly enjoyed every minute, so I was a bit sad watching this one.
Yeah, almost as much, if not equally as much as The Good Life, I think, which made me really sad when we got to the end of it. And this one, which, as we've discussed, may or may not have been intended to be the end. We suspect it wasn't intended to be the end, but just it happened that way because John Sullivan went on to make Only Fools and Horses in 88 and 89, and then, of course, around the early 90s, Ralph Bates sadly got pancreatic cancer and passed away. So this is the last one, and it actually works quite well as a final episode, doesn't it? It
does, but I still feel like you feel like there was so much more to come, isn't it? And it feels a shame.
Lost opportunity in it. Well, it attracted 9.2 million viewers, this one, on December the 21st, because, of course, it was a Christmas special.
Yep.
And, of course, the episode is called Kate Returns. Now, this one was up against Wish You Were Here and Home James. Do you remember Home James? It was like a...
I do. Who was that? Who was in Home James? I'm thinking Honor Blackman. Was it not?
I don't know. Jim Davidson was the main character. He was like a chauffeur, wasn't he?
Chauffeur, yeah.
And both those shows outperformed Dear John in the ratings. I mean, it seems mad to me.
Even Wish You Were Here? Like Judith Chalmers' Wish You Were Here?
Yeah. So 9.2 was quite disappointing. So, I mean, there's an argument to say that the BBC may not have even renewed it, but I think John Sullivan had a certain amount of sway. Clout, yeah, that's the word I'm looking for. So, yes, so there we go. Sadly, it was only 9.2 million, which wasn't a lot in those days. I know these days, like the finale of bloody Dancing on the River in Ice, or whatever it's called, that shit always gets about 8 or 9 million, because there's a lot more channels now, but there you go.
Yeah.
Now, I've been watching Dear John US a bit this week, I've watched 3 or 4 episodes of Dear John US. I think I mentioned in our bonus episode with our good friend Belinda Lang that in one episode Sylvia's husband Frank ended up going out with John because John thought she was a woman.
Okay.
Other things that I've discovered: the US Kirk Morris, he's very, very Fonz-like.
Is he?
Yeah, more Fonz-like than Peter Blake's portrayal. He calls Kate. He doesn't call her Tiger. He does that really obnoxious US thing that you'll have seen it in tons of movies and TV shows where a chauvinistic character refers to a red-headed person as Red.
Okay.
Hey, Red. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
What you looking at, Red? And, it's all sort of New Yorky.
Okay.
There's a lot. I mean, it's very close to John Sullivan's original scripts in these early ones I've looked at, and, just a few little embellishments, like, the Janis Joplin windsurfing line.
Yes.
He says, I saw Janis Joplin windsurfing with Mama Cass.
Blimey, right, okay.
So it's just slight variations, and like, hey, Mrs. Boyd Peters, forget about it.
Is it worth a visit, do you think, as a deep dive, for us to pick an episode of the American version and...
Yeah.
And deep dive it, do you think?
We'll do that. We'll do that. We'll pick one. I think we discussed doing the one with Blumleika, or actually, as she's pronouncing this one, Bloomleika.
Bloomleika, okay.
Bloomleika, and she's from Bulgaria instead of Poland.
I always wonder about that. Why they change?
I don't know why they change these things. Yeah, we could do the one with Woody Harrelson in as Louise's baby papa, I should say.
Oh, I think I'd like that one as well.
Yeah, he won it. Did he win an Emmy?
What for that?
For his guest slot? I don't know. I'm not that well up on it. I'm hoping to find someone who knows Dear John US to maybe guest with us.
Yeah.
Another interesting twist was the Ricky Fortune arc.
Yes.
When Ricky walked off because who was that band? Frankie? No, not Frankie Goes to Hollywood. Freddie and the Dreamers.
Frankie Goes to Hollywood.
Freddie and the Dreamers are also in this one, weirdly. But when Ricky is embarrassed, he walks off, and then the braying crowd are expecting Ricky. So John has to go on and pretend to be Ricky.
Okay, right.
Yeah. I'm not entirely sure why they make these weird decisions, but there you go.
Yeah.
The other thing this week I took in, media-wise, was our friends, the British Sitcom History podcast. I listened to their episodes on Dear John, which we recommended at the beginning of this run to listen to. And we didn't reveal it at the time, but we hadn't actually listened to those 2 episodes because we didn't want our stuff to become derivative of what they were saying.
Yeah. Yes.
And obviously those guys are very thorough and very entertaining, but in a way I'm amazed if anyone went to listen to their episodes, I'm amazed if they come back to us because they both hated Dear John completely.
Oh, no.
It's really funny listening to it. They're just absolutely eviscerated the entire show from top to bottom.
Well, they did say when we podded with them, they did say they were interested to hear what we thought of it once we'd rewatched it again. So perhaps they were very much aware that how much they didn't like it.
Yeah, they were talking very euphemistically, I think. But if you did listen to that and came back, well done, because that must have deterred you somewhat listening to the bile that Alan was giving forth on the subject. We love those guys anyway, so you do check out their podcast if you haven't already, I should say. Lastly, before we get stuck into this episode, we're recording this on the week that Tory MP was caught watching porn in the House of Commons.
Yes. On
his phone, by accident, in inverted commas. I posited the notion on Twitter that perhaps he was watching some sitcom porno parody and suggested a couple of names, like It Ain't Half Hot Cum. Because, going strong with something really disgusting.
Oh.
To the Man of Porn, obviously.
Excellent.
Still on the Game. How I Ate Your Mother. These are all mine so far. Going Straight, Up My Arse. But we got some great suggestions from the Twitterati, so I'll read a few out.
Oh, brilliant.
Curb Crawling with Enthusiasm.
Fantastic. Yeah.
I liked that one. Up the Elephant and Round the Arsehole. That made me laugh.
I suppose like a trunk. I'm waving my hand like a trunk then.
We've got Gary Wank Commander. Gary Tank Commander, obviously. Butterflies Undone.
Yeah.
Rising Cock, Damp Knickers.
Oh, that's very involved.
Yeah. Babes with a Wood.
Right.
Only When I Spaff.
Nice.
I like that one. What else we got? Oh, I came up with this one. Filthy Bitch and Twat Flaps. What have we got? The Tit Crowd instead of the It Crowd.
The It Crowd, yeah. Mrs.
Brown's Toys. Ooh, that doesn't bear thinking about, does it? Oh. The Dick of It. Mr. Flickin' the Bean. Gash. I quite like that one instead of Mash. The Liquor of Dibley. The Brit Ass Empire.
Yeah.
And a couple that don't even need to be renamed. Peep Show and Some Mothers Do Have 'Em.
Yeah.
They could be repurposed for porno purposes. Oh, Bless This House of Ill Repute. The Fence Street Gang Bang. Legs Open All Hours. I like this one. You Bang, My Lord.
Clever. I like that.
This one's a bit desperate. 2-point whore hard-ons.
That's just a porno word salad.
Yeah. And then I've saved the last two. Oh, I did Staff Licks Twats because I'm filthy. But then my very favourite one, of course, was Bush Strokes.
Bush Strokes. That is my favourite.
Brilliant, isn't it?
Yeah. Genius.
So well done, Twitter Artie, if you came up with one of them.
Thank you for them.
We enjoyed them. Shall we get stuck into this final episode, which is called Kate Returns?
Oh, let's do it. I feel like I want to put it off, but yeah, let's do it.
Dear John, by the time you read these lines, I'll be gone. Life goes on, right or wrong. Now it's all been said and done, dear John. Seems we've sung love's last song, dear John.
So this episode starts with John answering the door, the external door to the street.
Yes.
Late in the evening, to some hoodlum carol singers, I enjoyed the hoodlum carol singers because they're basically extorting money. They're singing like almost like you would on the terraces at the football, and then threateningly putting their hands out for some money.
Yes.
And they weren't very impressed with what they got from John first time round, so they just did a repeat, didn't they?
Just sang it again, and yeah, it was very much just chanting carols at the door.
God rest you, merry gentlemen, let nothing you dismay, 'cause Christ our Saviour was born on Christmas Day.
It was awful, but it was quite a good little extra punchline to it when John said, "Don't be late for school tomorrow," as they left.
Brilliant.
So as if they really could threaten him if he's a teacher. He tells Mrs. Lemensky, who of course is lurking in the background, he says it's just a muggergram. And Mrs. Lemensky thought it was visitors from the nutty bin.
Oh, one of them infamous Mrs. Lemensky lines.
Do you know that song? I think it was in the early noughties. It was a really good song by a band called the Avalanches. And it was like, that boy needs therapy. Well, what does that mean? He's a nut. He's as crazy as a coconut. Do you remember it?
It sounds like Mrs. Lemensky sang that.
Yeah. If I had the skills of someone like Will Bates, I'd be putting together a scratch music video to that with just Mrs. Lemensky calling people fruitcase people and stuff.
Yeah. You been eating chickens.
I love Mrs. Lemensky.
Yeah.
So John's lame Christmas decorations are mocked by Mrs. Lemensky, who's just followed him into his flat unbidden.
She does, doesn't she? She just sits down on his bed and starts chatting away. Oh.
Well, she's very lonely. It's quite transparent that she's lonely, even though she doesn't even know his name and just calls him various variations on crazy person. Mm. So John gives Mrs. Lemensky a Christmas card, and it becomes apparent that this is the first ever Christmas card she's had, not just that year, but in all her time living in the UK, which is over 2 decades.
That is quite sad, isn't it?
It is sad, yeah. She says she struggles to make friends. And to be honest, she's too blunt. I mean, it's not really that much. That's probably what it is, isn't it? And maybe some racism as well.
I think there's, a mix of both of those things, perhaps.
Yeah. I should have said John monologued out loud, or was it internal monologue? I can't remember. I think it's a bit of both. I think an outspoken monologue turns into his thoughts before Mrs. Lemensky comes in, where he's saying that he's not going to be alone this Christmas because he's expecting an invite from a friend.
Yeah, I think she comes in and goes out, and then he's monologuing about his rubbish decorations and
okay,
and sort of he's hopeful that he's not going to be spending Christmas alone in this room again this year. Which oh god, that made me feel really sad. Like, has he spent a Christmas in there on his own?
That's another thing about the US, dear John.
Cripes.
He makes reference to, like, I'm hardly living the high life in this flat, right? You know, when he's talking to Tosh from the Bill. Yeah. But he's living in a flat like Monaco from Friends. It's like, fuck me, I'd love to live there. Doesn't quite work that bit. Anyway, back to proper Dear John. I think the reason Mrs. Lemensky left and come back was she went to fetch some wine, didn't she?
The homemade wine?
Yes, yeah, spinach wine.
She shares a glass of the homemade wine with John, and he tastes it, and his face is like nearly inside out because it's just so strong.
Yeah.
And then when he says to her, "Are you not going to have a glass?" and she says, "No, I hate that horrible stuff."
It was very Peapod Burgundy type stuff. I wondered how John's reaction ranked against Mr. Cole's in that episode of The Good
Not
Life.
as good as Mr. Cole's. No.
He's just right up there, isn't he? On a pedestal
Mr.
in
Cole's
your mind.
Yeah, absolutely. This did remind me, though, of when I worked at the local newspaper near us, and I worked there as... The Ben. I worked as a reporter. It was the Bury Times, actually.
Oh, okay.
And I used to do stories about a Romanian family who had set up a charity and were going back and forth to Romania to help build an orphanage. And the dad used to pop in and sort of give me an update on where they were up to and fundraising. And he once brought me a bottle of, I don't know how he got it into the country, this homemade Romanian spirit. And it must have been, it must have been knocking on 90% proof.
Jesus.
And I left it in my drawer at work. If there'd have ever been like a fire, like a mini fire that could have been put out quite easily, anywhere near the drawer, honestly, I'd have been done for arson, I'm sure, because it was just, honestly, I've never tasted anything like it. It had fumes, you know, like if you opened your mouth afterwards, you could see like the fumes coming out because it was so strong.
Wow.
So I could only picture how bad the spinach wine was.
What do they call that type of stuff? Is it potcine or something like that?
Oh, I don't know.
Oh, moonshine. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it was so thick, it was almost chewy. It was really potent stuff.
That's made me think of Special Brew, how horrible that was to drink.
Yeah, not enjoyable.
No, Sean Locke used to do a routine where he said that garages sell Special Brew, and he said it's not exactly a drive-in drink, is it? No, good old Sean. Mrs. Lemensky also reveals that she's from the Czech-Polish border.
Yes.
And she's got 3 grown-up children spread out all over the world, so it's nice to know that she has had a family, isn't it? And that she's not just this lonely old spinster who's never lived. And she says in Christmas 1934, which obviously seems like such a long time ago now to us, you know, nearly 40 years later.
Yeah.
She says her husband brought home a record that they used to play on the gramophone. The only one they'd ever owned. And then she sort of sings it to John.
Yeah.
In Czech, I guess, or Polish.
Well, he was Austrian. The guy, the opera singer, was Austrian. And cause I tried to look up what it was, the song, but I couldn't quite. Obviously, my Austrian's not that good.
It's not up there.
So I couldn't pick out the actual title in order to find the song, but I think it was Austrian.
Well, if I can find it, I'll use it as the exit music to this episode. So it was a tradition for her and her husband Branislav, which is a name that I like.
Yeah.
Branislav.
Every
Christmas Eve until he left for the war and never came back. You know, they'd put it on Christmas Eve on their gramophone and they'd dance. And she says some people think he was captured by the Russians or killed by Nazis, but she likes to think he met a nice woman with a hi-fi system.
I just thought that was so sort of poignant, and the whole sort of backstory to Mrs. Lemensky has only come really in this episode. We just see her as this woman that lurks around, and she's actually got this quite sad backstory. She's had a family, she's had a husband, and her kids, she doesn't know where they are now, and they don't get in touch, and she's spent the last 20 Christmases on her own. Oh.
With no Christmas cards.
With no Christmas cards.
For Mrs. Lemensky.
You're a lunatic person. They should put you in a home for fruitcase people.
Hello, this is a broadcast signal intrusion from RetroTube Archive Television Podcast.
Every week on RetroTube, Two best friends take it in turns to introduce each other to their favourite TV shows from the 60s, 70s and 80s.
I inflict onto Heather all the weird, low-budget, hauntological shows held together with sellotape and stored in an empty cupboard in the back of your most fevered nightmares. And also Doctor Who.
And I make Adam watch the glossy, colourful spy shows with a budget of 2 separate feature films and starring impossibly glamorous trendsetters in sparkly catsuits and the finest Savile Row slacks and blazers, and also Thunderbirds.
So far we've covered Man from U.N.C.L., The Adventure Game, The Persuaders, Blake 7, Battle of the Planets, Mission Impossible, Grange Hill, The Monkees, Magical Mystery Tour, The Prisoner, Children of the Stones, and all sorts.
If that sounds like it'd be right up your proverbial televisual Strasser, why not look up RetroTube on your favourite podcast provider? As with all the best things in life, we are best enjoyed with a good brew and a biscuit. Adam, would you like to have the last word?
Hopefully people will know what that means.
So we cut to a house party where Louise is there, but she's saying hello to John. She still doesn't know the bastard's name, though, does she?
No.
Even after 2 series.
Pissed me off, that. Pissed me off.
Ralph and Sylvia are there somewhere too, because we can hear Sylvia's laugh. And Louise and John are discussing Kirk's mysterious absence of late. He hasn't been to the one-to-one club. And I don't know if they're missing him or just curious as to where he's gone. But this is really the main crux of this episode, isn't it? Where's Kirk? Kirk's disappeared.
Where's Kirk gone? Yeah.
John takes the opportunity to invite himself to Louise's house for dinner on Christmas Day, but she body swerves it.
She does?
Yeah, she says she'll be with her ex for some not particularly well-established reason. I didn't really understand.
Yeah, that's what they always spend that time together, and he's all right. Once he's had that time together, he goes off and does his own thing. But I assumed that she was a divorcee as well. So why is she spending it with her ex? Odd.
Louise reveals, though, at this point that Kate is back on Christmas Eve. She's back from a trip to Greece and around Europe, and that there's going to be a welcome home meal for her, booked a restaurant on Christmas Eve. So that's interesting, and obviously we knew she was coming back because the episode's called Kate Returns. But Sylvia turns up, and like Louise before her, she's sort of sympathising with John, because Louise was also making reference to the fact that John won't be with Toby at Christmas. I think John's getting a bit fed up of being reminded of it, though, isn't he? Sort of like, yes, I know, thanks for reminding me.
Yeah.
But John invites himself to Sylvia's for Christmas too.
Oh, second try. He has another try, doesn't he?
I think he's just assuming if he works his way through the list, eventually someone will say yes, but it's not going to be Sylvia, because she's got a house full.
Yeah, I'm glad Sylvia's got a house full at Christmas.
Yeah, she's got a kids, and she said there's some guests. And she asks if John's going to be alone, but he's too proud to admit that that's the case.
Yeah.
So he just moves on to Ralph, who for some reason is covered in plasters on his face.
And he's still looking at his photo of Blomlika.
Oh, I didn't clock that, was he? Is that what he was doing?
Still, yeah.
Well, Ralph's spending Christmas with his mother, so he's a no-go too. So he's not doing very well, John, is he?
Oh, Ralph's had a bit of an issue, though, hasn't he, with the Hells Angels that live next door.
Yeah, that's what the injuries are, isn't it? Because he decided to complain about their sort of hijinks. Well, it's more than hijinks, isn't it? It's like fighting with flint knives and machetes out in the street, yeah.
He did go out, though. He tried to go and sort it, though, and tell them to be quiet, but they threw him into a holly bush.
He's pretty fearless, Ralph, you know.
He is, isn't he? Yeah, he's got like a really sort of strong sense of right and wrong, hasn't he? And he wants to sort of put things right, and against all odds of him not being a very sort of strong physical person.
Yeah, because he says he just went and put his dressing gown and slippers on and went out to complain because somebody had to, you know. Oh. So he's got a strong moral compass.
He has.
Didn't do much good because he ended up covered in scratches from a holly bush, and turns out that he got one of them arrested, and they're clearly bearing a grudge because he had a note through the door, did he, saying something like, "We'll get you for this, you four-eyed prat."
No, not four-eyed prat.
That's really harsh, isn't it? Real harsh words from a biker gang. You're a four-eyed prat. You Wally. You blighter. So anyway, Ralph wishes that Kirk had been there to so that Ralph could have availed of his martial arts skills and sorted them out.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't believe everything you hear.
Oh, no, he told me himself. He's a great kendo fan.
Are you sure he said kendo and not Ken Dodd?
I like that one.
Ralph refers to Kirk as being his best friend here as well, which I thought was quite sweet.
That's sweet, isn't it? And he is concerned that the group haven't seen or heard from Kirk in ages. He says, when I called Kirk's penthouse, because he still believes this, web of lies.
Yeah.
He says a strange Irish lady answered saying she'd never heard of Kirk's immigrants. Which, it's weird because Ralph's forgotten all about what John told him about Kirk's/Eric, hasn't he?
Yes.
It's like it's been discounted.
Yeah, it does feel like that, doesn't it? That he's just completely ignored that, and he's concerned, isn't he, about his best friend?
Yeah, so I think this is why John then makes his excuses, clearly with the intention of popping around to Kirk's place and checking up on him, making sure he's okay. So we cut to Kirk at home, who is, in full Eric form, reading his Nam comic.
Nam magazine. Oh,
love he was making machine gun sounds while he was reading it as well. The big kid, while his Irish mammy is watching Every Second Counts and singing the praises of the sainted young Paul Daniels.
Young, the fact that she called him young Paul Daniels, that just, I don't know, it made me feel a bit uncomfortable.
It's not a word, is it, that you associate with Paul Daniels? Young.
No.
Creepy.
A couple of things that she said just made me feel weird, just like odd turns of phrase that were weird.
I don't know, it didn't strike me as that weird because it was very Irish mammy and I'm kind of used to Irish mammy talk, I guess. Do you know Paul Daniels' real name was Newton Daniels?
Was what?
Newton
Daniels?
Yeah, you're looking incredulous. Do you not believe me? You think it's a joke?
I'm waiting for I'm trying to figure out a punchline before you tell me.
No, that's his
real name?
Yeah.
Newton?
If anything, it seems like it's the wrong way round because Paul Daniels sounds like an ordinary, boring name, like Reg Dwight or Gordon Sumner. And Newton Daniels sounds far more like a showbiz stage name, but it's the other way round.
It does.
Yeah, weird, eh?
My granddad was a singer, just around, in and around sort of like the Northwest. And he had a stage name.
Oh, yeah?
His real name was Fred Brown.
Right.
Which is not very starry. And his stage name was Paul Brent, which isn't massively more starry.
Not a huge step up, no.
It's not, is it? It's no Newton Daniels, though, is it?
No. Paul Brent.
Paul Brent.
If I Google Paul Brent, will I get any old school posters?
I don't know. But we've got like newspaper cuttings of him with his stage name. And
what type was he? Was he like an Elvis tribute act or?
He was a tenor.
Well, I mean, you've got to start somewhere. He can build his way up and charge more.
Work his way up to 20 and 50. Do you know what, though? When we were watching the Mrs. Lemensky husband record scene, it did remind me because we found my granddad had recorded some songs on record in Bolton that we didn't have a record player to play because you can get like, what is it, like you get 33 and then is it 45?
Yeah.
But these are like the in-betweeny one that you play at a completely different speed to anything else. But he'd recorded his own music. Some of it was in Italian. He wasn't an Italian speaker, but he'd learnt it phonetically.
Yeah.
To be able to sing it as a tenor in Italian. And we've still got these records now. And we had to go out and buy a record player that looked a bit like John's record player to play these on.
Because it had the correct speed setting?
Yes, to play it at the correct speed. So there's only one player. We've only got this like one record player that you can play them on.
Right.
But it reminded me of Mrs. Lemensky sort of feeling so fondly about her husband's record and dancing at Christmas time.
Talking of Italian, I went to Sardinia once on my holiday and I arrived late in Sardinia and I had to go and pick up the keys to the house that we'd rented. And I had to meet this local Sardinian at a bar and it was 11:30, 11:45 at night.
Okay.
And it felt a bit dodgy and I'm hanging around outside this bar looking for this guy who's not shown up on time. And the proprietors and the barflies in the bar are sort of looking at me like, who's this guy hanging around, this, fat white guy. It's like just lingering outside my bar at nearly midnight. So one of them come up to me to try and check up on me. And because I don't speak a word of Italian, I couldn't get my point across. And so, you know the way when you're abroad and you start trying to speak pidgin French or wherever you are?
No, yeah.
So I fell back on the only bits of Italian that came to mind, which was lyrics from Miss Sarajevo that Pavarotti sings. You know the U2 song, Miss Sarajevo?
So what did you say to him?
Well, I've just Googled the lyrics. I said, non so più preghiera, which I thought might be like non so più, like I don't speak.
Yeah.
So, non so più preghiera, nell'amor non so più sperare, quell'amor non so più aspettare. I didn't say it all at once. It's just he kept talking to me and I kept saying these lines back to him.
U2 lyrics to him.
Yeah. I don't know what I was thinking, but when I looked it up, and it says, so what it translates to is, I no longer know how to pray. In love, I can no longer hope. And at love, I can no longer wait.
You crazy person.
Yeah, you nutcase, fruitcase person. This guy was just shaking his head at me and walking away
no.
I think he must have called the local loony bin.
Yeah. Did you get your keys?
I did. The guy turned up like half hour late. I think the moral of the story is just not to quote U2 lyrics or Pavarotti.
No.
When you're on your jollies. So in between her praise for Newton Daniels, this Irish mammy, Mrs. Morris, she's making passive-aggressive mean remarks about Eric being thick, and she reminisces about applying to 321 on Eric's behalf, but they never heard back, and she thinks it's because of Eric's big ears.
Yeah, they only wanted married couples, and he said you don't see big ears on telly except with Noddy and at a royal wedding, which I thought was a really funny line.
But she doesn't seem to think that he was self-conscious, and Eric sort of says, I used to hide in my wardrobe so no one could see me. It was just him and his torch and his Incredible Hulk album. So he clearly was very self-conscious, but she's so awful a mother that she hasn't picked up on these awful remarks that she's making.
He's traumatised, isn't he? He's got really bad trauma, the poor dude.
I think he goes and picks up a photo album from 1960 where he sat on Bognor Beach in a heatwave with a balaclava helmet on.
With reindeers on it.
Yeah, to hide his ears. So you think she'd have picked up on the hint that he's self-conscious about his ears. She lambasts Kirk. She says, you've not been out for weeks, stop moping about the place, which I guess explains Kirk's absence from the one-to-one scene.
Yeah.
He's not been going out at all, never mind to the one-to-one club. He says, I'm saving up my money for plastic surgery. And she thinks it's for his ears, but he says, no, it's for your mouth.
Touché. I agree.
She whacks him though, doesn't she? That's another Irish mammy thing. She just gives him a swipe.
You remember the time when I wrote off to 321? I sent them your photograph and everything. But we never heard back though, did we?
No. As I said at the time, they want married couples on their show. Not a 36-year-old bachelor and his mum.
Well, personally, I think they spotted your ears. They don't want people with big ears on television. You never see big ears on telly. Unless it's Noddy or a royal wedding. You've always had them ears, haven't you?
Yes.
Still, they've had their advantages, haven't they?
Yeah, my glasses never fallen off.
So Mrs. Morris is trying to set up Eric with some munter with gums too big for a mouth, it transpires.
With Una.
Una, yeah. And Eric says, you're not getting me off with that dollop, which is not very kind either.
I don't like the word dollop, but
Yeah.
And then they're going to invite her around for tea.
For a cooked tea.
A cooked tea, that was it. I knew it was something that involved food and it being hot. That's a really odd thing. What's the opposing?
Cold cuts.
An uncooked tea, like picky bits.
Cold
like
cuts,
sausage
yeah.
rolls.
Maybe.
So is this supposed to be like an exciting thing where a cooked tea is a better option than a buffet, for example?
I think, again, it's a very Irish thing.
Right, okay.
My nan used to make me, not that my nan's Irish, my grandfather was, but she used to make me, because we're all from Liverpool, so it's all Irish descent.
Yeah.
She used to make me something she called lovely dinner.
Do you think that's an equivalent of a cooked tea?
No, lovely dinner, which was the name she gave it, was basically she chopped up an apple, she chopped up a banana, she chopped up she got a bunch of grapes, chopped up some cheese. Sometimes there might be a bit of peach on there, And then she'd just given me a plate full of fruit and cheese. And that was lovely dinner.
That sounds like a ploughman's. A potential ploughman's there. Fruit and cheese.
It's almost like a cross between a ploughman's without the bread and a fruit salad.
Yeah.
It was nice. Lovely dinner. It was just basically just fruit and a bit of cheese, you know.
Oh, fancy a bit of lovely dinner. I fancy that now.
Do you?
Bit of a lovely dinner.
There you go. I'll make you one when you come over.
Thank you. Fruit and cheese.
So, Mrs. Morris, she says that she'll make her something special so she doesn't have to chew.
She's a bloody bitch, isn't she?
She disappears for a bath at this point and the doorbell goes. Obviously, it's John who's popped round to check on Kirk. Eric unlocks it cautiously. There's like about 1 billion bolts he has to undo.
It's like 4 knocks, isn't it?
It's funny. And John invites himself in. But unfortunately, he walks into the bathroom where Mrs. Morris is taking a bath. Not a good move. But Kirk says, it's all right, he's a teacher.
Yeah. What an odd thing to say.
I think it was still in those days where authority meant something, whereas these days teachers are more likely to be sex perverts than anything else. No, sorry, teachers. Don't mean you particularly.
Not you in particular. Fucking hell.
John explains that he's come from a party and everyone was asking where Kirk was. But Eric says at this point, Kirk St. Moritz is no more. I've disowned him.
Yeah, never going to be seen again.
Kirk was a crass, arrogant, obnoxious man that everyone hated.
Well, I wouldn't say hated, despised, maybe.
Kirk failed.
Kirk says he realised Kirk had failed when his tiger packed her bags and left for Greece. Oh. But John reveals that she's back for Christmas and says, come along as Eric, come along as yourself, or even come as Kirk if you like. But Kirk says, you'll never see Kirk and you probably never see me ever again. He's in a real low space, isn't he?
Oh, he is. He is.
Eric says, I've got a woman lined up anyway, referring to the gummy girl, Una. So John basically just accepts this and wishes Eric all the best, doesn't he? Eric sees him out.
Yeah.
He asks John, doesn't he, to make an excuse on Kirk's behalf to Kate when she turns up for the meal. I think he suggests an Afghanistan mission that Kirk is on, and John says he's just going to say, I'm just going to tell her that you've moved to Luton. More reasonable.
Ooh, I like Richard Bryars. I like Richard Bryars. I like Richard Bryars. I like Richard Bryars.
So that's all very sad, and we're all like, oh God, Kirk's in a bad way, you know.
Yes.
The next scene we see is now outside Wendy's house, where John is there to pick up young Toby, played by our friend Will Bates.
Yes. He's taking Toby out for the afternoon, but he's under strict instructions to bring him back in time for a bath.
Yes.
Before he goes off to his Christmas time away with his grandparents.
Yeah, that's right. And because Mike answers the door, doesn't he? It's a different Mike. It's not the same Mike.
No, I spotted that. I think this guy was actually Welsh because he sounded like the accent fitted.
I'm not sure he was, you know. I just think I just think he did a better impression.
Oh, yeah. Just a better actor? Okay.
But Mike's telling John about Toby spending Christmas in Cheshire, and he says, they're lovely people. John says, I know, they are my parents.
They're his mum and dad. So, which begs the question, why's John not got an invite?
Yeah.
Toby to his own parents' house?
It's not really explained, is it? Probably just doesn't fit the plot.
It just felt a bit weird to...
Well, it's clearly, it's done this way because at the end, John Sullivan obviously wanted Wendy on her own. Do you know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah.
But it doesn't make a hell of a lot of sense when you think about it.
No.
Mike disappears to the rugby, and then Wendy brings our friend Toby, to the door.
Yeah.
Wendy and John seem on fairly good terms, and everything's okay. He's a bit irritated by being bossed about John, but they wave Mike off, and he drives off recklessly in John's old car when Toby's sort of says, doesn't Uncle Mike drive fast?
I don't know how John manages it. Mike's there in his house with his wife, driving his car.
Yeah.
I just, oh my God, I just find it really frustrating.
He's been playing a lot of rugby with Mike as Toby, and John says to Toby, I didn't think you liked rugby anymore. And Toby again shows what a kind and caring kid he is. because he confesses he doesn't, but he just pretends to keep Mike happy. He says, you know what adults are like.
Yeah, he's very grown up, isn't he?
Quite a sweet kid.
Toby's a very mature little boy.
So then it cuts to John. He's back on his own, obviously had his day out with Toby. He's in the usual boozer, ordering a pint of ordinary, which I don't know what a pint of ordinary is. I have heard it before, but I don't know what it is as a drink.
Was it £1 and 2p?
Yes, tuppence.
For a pint. Tuppence for a pint.
Pretty good. And as John looks around for a seat, he sees Eric sort of wearing a Mac with the hood right up, doesn't he? And he's fiddling with his coin purse.
Yeah.
With his change.
Oh.
And Eric says, what are you doing here? You never come to this pub. That's why I came here, ignoring the fact that this is totally the normal pub that we always see them in.
Yeah.
It's the same pub.
Oh. Eric's really, it really throws him, doesn't it? Because he's not expecting them all to turn up and sort of catch him there as Eric. He's desperate to sort of get away, isn't he?
Yeah, he is, but I don't know. I'm reading too much into it because it obviously wasn't scripted like this, but I like to think that a part of him wanted to see Kate and wanted to be there and be around his old friends.
Okay.
Yeah, but I mean, John asks Eric to join them all, but Eric's having none of it. He says he's going to scarp her as soon as he's finished his bevy.
Yeah.
I think he's got his dry cleaning with him as well. So John says, how did the date go with Una? With the cooked tea? How did that work out? Eric says she was 5 foot tall, 300 pounds, and teeth like tombstones, and she had more gum than Wrigley's, which I loved. I love that line. So John says, it's not going to work out. He said, no, she didn't fancy me.
Oh.
So that was the problem, not the other way around.
Yeah.
It's just a real, real sad life that he's leading at this point, isn't it?
Yeah.
So Ralph unexpectedly turns up early in his full motorcycle combination paraphernalia, and Eric panics somewhat, I think. He tries to turn away, but John introduces them.
Yes.
And somewhat unbelievably, but in a kind of Clark Kent way, which foreshadows what comes a bit later.
Yeah.
Ralph doesn't recognise Eric as Kirk at all.
No, totally misses it. Do you think that Peter Blake was made to look more Clark Kent looking in this episode? I saw that straight away.
I think he looked the same as last time, but maybe he had that. Maybe he had this arc in mind for Kirk anyway. At that,
there was definitely that vibe to it. That he was supposed to be in the same way that we see Clark Kent and think, how does no one know that he's Superman? Yeah, I feel it had that same feel to it.
So, but John introduces the two of them, and John says Eric's a fellow teacher, and there's a great but totally predictable joke where Ralph says, "Well, what do you teach?"
Nice to meet you, Eric.
Nice to meet you, Ralph.
Are you a colleague from John's school?
Yeah.
Oh, I see, yeah. What do you teach?
Children.
I loved it. The delivery of the line as well, I thought was it was just very well done.
Yeah, I think we said in the last Eric Morris episode, which was the final of the last series, actually.
Yeah.
It's weird, isn't it? Because he's not the main character, but the main beats of the comedy revolve around him.
Yeah.
And the sort of dramatic beats, I guess, is what I mean. Well, the comedic beats as well. To me, he's the sort of... Yeah, he's he's not the breakout star because he didn't go on to do anything high profile, but he's definitely the most memorable character, shall we say, from the show.
Definitely, yeah, definitely.
Whether that gets him the MVP at the end of this episode for the entire series, we'll have to see.
Ooh.
But yes, so Eric stays at the bar, I think, for a moment, and John and Ralph sit down. Ralph says to John, "Eric seems familiar, but I can't quite place him. He seems nice enough, but a bit boring."
Yeah. This episode especially made me feel that Eric and Ralph would be such good friends. You could see that they would get on, and it's a shame.
Eric overhears that, though, doesn't he? So this is just another way of knocking his fragile confidence even further.
Absolutely, yeah.
He sort of turns around and he just looks a bit mortified, doesn't he?
Yeah.
That Ralph, the epitome of a sad sack, is basically saying that he's boring.
Thinks he's boring. Mm.
So I think he grabs his dry cleaning and tries to leave, but just as he's about to head out the door, he hears Sylvia and Louise coming the other way. So again, he panics and spins around and quickly grabs the nearest seat so they don't bump into him and recognise him. And Louise and Sylvia are squabbling about Louise's driving, as she's just had a prank in a car wash. Takes some doing, doesn't it?
It does.
Ralph goes to the bar to get some wine for the ladies, and Louise takes the opportunity to slag off the homemade wine at the party the previous night, which John is looking a bit embarrassed about, because clearly he was the one who brought it. Is that because it's Mrs. Lemensky's wine?
I assumed it was, that it was the Mrs. Lemensky homebrew, spinach homebrew, yeah.
I've only just made that connection now, and I made these notes and everything, and didn't, silly me. It all comes together, it's all very well woven, isn't it?
Mm.
Sylvia remarks that ordinarily Kirk would get the blame for this vile wine, and Louise says, well, that was one thing she liked about that cretin. You could blame him for things. And again, Kirk's one table along and he overhears.
Sat there.
She doesn't know that, to be fair.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah, but he is a cretin, isn't he, Kirk? Eric might not be, but Kirk is a cretin. I don't blame Louise for that.
Yeah, okay.
And then Kate bursts in, played by our friend Belinda Lang. Kate bursts in with a big ta-da! And they all embrace her.
She did.
Eric just sort of looks over forlornly, longingly.
Oh. She's got a tan and a new haircut as well.
She has, yeah. It's never that far removed from the Bill in 2.4 Children haircut, is it, though?
No.
Although it is quite far removed from that in this Sister Boniface Mysteries. Have you seen it?
Oh, wow, yeah. She looks completely different.
Yeah.
Obviously.
There's one episode of it where she's a honey trap to catch a murderer, and she...
Excellent.
In Sister Boniface, so they have to beautify this old lady. Her name's Mrs. Clam, I think, the character.
Right.
So you can see that underneath all of that old lady kind of get-up, she's still a beautiful woman, you know.
She's still beautiful. I was blown away by how pretty she still was and recognisable. Not so far removed from the Kate character or the Bill character. Just lovely. Just lovely.
Yeah, it's quite watchable in that gentle, local village murder way. You know, the way that these places, they always seem to be awash with murders.
Yeah.
In the middle of nowhere. Like what my nan used to call the Summerfield Mysteries. What was it called? With John Nettles in.
They've all got the same vibe, haven't they?
Yeah, yeah. Although I don't think it was set in a supermarket. I think my nan got a bit...
No, I don't think so.
This is the woman, though, who thought she was watching Lost when I gave her the DVDs, and she was actually... hadn't turned it to AV.
Okay.
And she was actually watching ITV and thought she was watching my DVDs. So when I said to her, how are you getting on with Lost? Oh, it's all right, but the big gorilla's getting on my nerves. I said, there is a big polar bear in Lost, but no big gorilla. Turned out she'd been watching Kong, the movie Kong, on ITV.
No way. That is brilliant.
And I said, and it was on ITV, so I said, did it not keep going to adverts? He said, yeah, I thought that was weird on a DVD.
Oh, that's ace.
And I said, when it went to adverts, did it not keep coming up Kong on the screen? Well, now you mention it.
That is fab. Oh.
She is a character. So, Louise wants the latest gossip about the man that Kate has apparently met out in Greece called Christos.
Christos. Mm.
And Kate very coyly admits that he's lovely, and you see a real pitiful sneer from Eric in the background.
Oh.
Kate asks if any of them have ever tried a drink called a metaxa.
This harges back, doesn't it, to a few episodes ago where they were talking about it being an aphrodisiac.
Were they? To her, or...?
Yes, metaxa's an aphrodisiac. When she wasn't there, Kirk had heard this. Is this why he ended up getting drunk? Because he was...
Oh.
Because he was sort of panicking that she was going to run off with a Greek after drinking loads of metaxa. Mm.
Sylvia says it is supposed to be an aphrodisiac, and Kate sort of says, well, it works. And then Eric behind him, he just lets out this sort of injured wailing sound, doesn't he? So anyway, the group are preparing to depart for this Greek restaurant that Louise has booked. But not before John invites himself to Kate's now for Christmas, to save her from being alone. But of course, Kate has brought Christos home with her.
Yeah, she's not interested in having sad sack John round.
No. And there's another wail from Eric one table along, isn't there?
Oh, God.
So, glad to be home.
Well, I had some reservations, but it is Christmas, isn't it?
Right. I've been thinking, Kate, I don't like the thought of you being on your own over the holidays, so if you like, I'll come round to your flat on Christmas Day and keep you company.
Oh, that's very sweet of you, John. But there's a bit of a snag. I brought Christos home with me. Oh. You're not going to be on your own over Christmas, are you?
Me? No, hundreds of invitations.
Oh, good. Well, should we get going?
And as Kate, John and Ralph prepare to leave, Sylvie and Louise have already gone at this point. A raucous motorbike gang suddenly arrive, clearly the same Hells Angels that were referenced by Ralph.
Yes. Ralph's neighbours.
So these Hells Angels fellas, right, one of them is clearly Big Ron from EastEnders.
Yeah.
They're very stereotyped. They're just covered in grease and dirt. I thought it was quite a bit OTT, really.
Just lank ponytails and leather waistcoats, isn't it, really?
And smudges on the face to show that they don't wash.
Yeah.
Or maybe they've been fixing a chain on their bike, but that's a push bike, isn't it? Yeah. You're not much of a Hell's Angel if you're going round on a BMX, are you?
Oh, they recognise Ralph and call him the combination cowboy, which I thought was ace.
Well, the lead guy, the guy that Ralph got arrested, he has some great lines, I thought.
Yeah.
Ralph's full of bravado, though, because this time there's two of us, and he nods at John.
And oh, my God.
And he threateningly points out that John is an ex-rugby player. As if that makes any difference. Because the Angels are scathing, and they say to John, well, who did you play for? And John says, I was a regular at Teacher Training College.
No way.
So the Hells Angels, they grab Ralph and they start sort of roughhousing him. John urges the barman to call the police. But I think the barman's a bit of a coward, isn't he? He says, I've seen nothing to the Angels because he doesn't want
to get involved.
Doesn't want to get duffed up himself, does he?
Mm.
So John turns to Eric. He says, are you just going to sit there? And Eric says, no, I'll see you around. And he darts for the back entrance.
Oh.
But in the hallway, we see Eric pause as he hears his friend Ralph screaming behind him.
Yep.
And he's clearly torn, isn't he? He's looking furtively between the exit and the door back to the bar. And then he looks at his dry cleaning and he looks at the toilet door behind him and he dives into the toilets and we start to hear the theme tune from Superman start to chime. And then it's really well done because it cuts back to the bar while this refrain sort of continues and we see Kate being pushed and pulled about a bit. I think Big Ron's got John in a headlock, hasn't he?
Yeah.
And then we cut back to the toilet and coming out the doorway, predictably but brilliantly, Kirk St. Moritz just struts out, doesn't he? I don't know about you, but I'm punching the air at this point. It's brilliant.
I loved it. I absolutely, as did the audience who let out an audible cheer as well.
Yeah.
Which made me very happy.
Yeah. And he does before he walks into the bar, he does like a Fonzie click of the fingers, doesn't he? Like, right,
it does.
Click, and he's in.
Yeah, come on, let's get this show on the road.
The audience are cheering. And then, we see Ralph hanging by the back of his collar from a coat peg. John's still in the headlock from Big Ron, and Kirk just booms, whoa!
Ralph says, Kirk! Look at me, Kirk! I'm on a cut, Kirk!
But, I mean, they all freeze, don't they? All these Angels are like, whoa, who's this? And then, again, the main buddy has a brilliant line where he says, oh dear, I wonder if it's catching. And Big Ron says, what? And he says, Saturday Night Fever.
Yay!
He's hurting me!
Wait, Kate! I'm here!
Whoa! It's Kirk! 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 Look at me, Kirk! I'm running on a coat up, Kirk!
I'm hearing you, buddy.
Oh dear. I wonder if it's catching.
What catching?
Saturday Night Fever.
So Kirk saunters up to the main villain, moving chairs out of the way in a sort of threatening way, like he's going to kick off. And he just exhales in disgust and says, last time I smelled something like that, it'd just been put down.
Oh. Now, it appears to me, rat breath, that you and your missing links here are upsetting my friends. And Kirk St. Moritz allows no one to upset his friends.
Is that right? And what are you going to do about it?
Kirk basically gives them two options here. He says, we could either, and then it quite cleverly cuts to an outside exterior view of the boozer while you hear all these fighting noises.
Yes.
And then it cuts back inside where Kirk's got the main guy pinned to the wall and he's coolly saying, oh, we could talk about it. Everything's already played out because as the camera pans back, you see the remainder of this gang sprawled amidst like a bedlam of broken chairs and mayhem.
It's proper God's tone, aren't he?
They're all in agony. Mm. So basically, the gang leave with a tail between the legs. They're even singing "We Wish You a Merry Christmas" as they go.
Yeah, such a weird turn of events, really, isn't it? They've gone from being these like big bully boys to just leaving and
carol singers.
Yeah.
Kirk struts up to Kate and he says he'll be hitching a lift to the restaurant with her as the Porsche is still in dock. Puts his arm around and the two of them leave with her sort of seemingly impressed, which maybe speaks to that thing that Belinda told us about. It's not really written for women, this, is it? I mean, it's not really.
No.
I don't think she would be.
I wanted to find out, though. I feel like there's so much that I wanted to find out after this episode.
Well, yeah, she's still got Christos at home.
She has.
And I wouldn't have thought that would be sufficient to have won a round on Kirk's behalf. But anyway, I mean, it's a nice ending to them. We don't see them again after that, do we? And then the scene ends with Ralph still pegged up triumphantly, sort of washing his hands, doesn't he, and saying, I won't have any trouble with them anymore.
Yeah. Oh, Ralph, he's ace.
Although one of them left saying he was going to get a machete. So,
yeah,
I won't be so confident. But next thing we see, John's entering his flat. He's had a lift home, presumably from the restaurant or maybe somewhere they went on afterwards.
Yeah.
He had a lift from Ralph, but not in the sidecar, which is missing.
Probably in a doorway of a C&A.
Yeah, it probably is, yeah. I forgot about that. So John must have had a backie then, I guess. Because there's no motorcycle combination.
What a vision.
And again, if I had the skills, I'd mock up some sort of visual representation of that and share it.
Oh.
John enters his little shithole and he sort of grimly looks around at it before returning to the hallway because the phone's ringing, so he's out there to answer the phone. Beats Mrs. Lemensky to the phone. And the most uncomfortable bit of this entire episode for me, because it's Wendy.
Ugh.
Ooh, Wendy. Ugh. She says there's been an accident, which is a cruel way of saying it because he must obviously think it's Toby, but it turns out it's Mike. And Mike's broken his leg at the rugby, to John's absolute delight.
You wouldn't do that, would you? You wouldn't introduce the start of the conversation with that, knowing what John's going to think. But some people just do that, don't they? Some people are just dramatic like that.
Yeah, they like to string it out.
And Wendy is.
Yeah. But it turns out Mike's got a compound fracture, so John does that thing where he thanks God and punches
He does. Punches the air, doesn't he?
At this point, I'm wondering what Wendy's motives are for even calling and telling John, but it quickly becomes clear. Because Mike's going to have the operation tomorrow, which is Christmas Day.
Yeah.
He's going to be in hospital for 2 weeks. And the manipulative old sow is basically feeling sorry for herself because she's going to be alone at Christmas, because obviously Toby's away, as we said earlier, in Cheshire.
Yes.
She's doing her best to tempt John over the phone with tales of food and drink and Yuletide logs and things.
This is on the back of asking John to go and visit Mike as well.
Yes, yeah.
What kind of world would that happen?
Well,
don't like Wendy.
She's an awful person, yeah.
She is.
Sure. John says at this point, I'm looking at the back of my shirt to see if there's a number 12 on it, which I think is a joke that didn't really land.
No.
But he's basically saying, I'm the substitute and I know that you're using me.
Oh, okay, right.
Do you remember the Christmases before Toby was born? Do you remember that silly game we used to play after dinner?
Yes.
You always won, didn't you?
Yes.
No one would ever know. It'd be our little secret. It'd be very daring. You liked it when it was daring, didn't you?
Yes.
What do you think?
She's giving it large with this bloody flirting voice that she's got, and it gives me the boke. It's horrible, isn't it?
Yeah. It is. Even at the end when she does that kissy noise. Ugh.
Oh, God,
Shut
no.
up, Wendy.
So John's really torn. He's unsure what he's going to do. But Wendy says she's going to leave an extra cracker out and then says, bye, darling. And like you say, she blows him a vomit-inducing kiss. As John wrestles with his principles, out loud, of course, because there's nobody else to talk to.
Yeah, there's no one to talk to anybody else about it.
He seems to be basically deciding, fuck it, she can use my body like a piece of meat. And he's singing Jingle Bells and sort of, he might be starting to pack a bag or something, I'm not entirely sure. But Mrs. Lemensky comes in with a return Christmas card for John because he gave her one. She's gone out and bought him a bigger one.
Oh.
And John, and this is really moving, he gives Mrs. Lemensky something really special. The record that she referenced at the start of the show by that opera singer that she used to dance.
Brilliant.
Yeah, she used to dance with it on Christmas Eve with Branislav. And she's really moved, isn't she? She says, thank you, mad person.
I love it. I love it. I think it's what a nice gesture on John's behalf.
John, at this point, he puts it on his turntable for her and it starts to play it. Not much of a toe tapper.
No.
For me, but she loves it, doesn't she? She goes into a sort of reverie and then John asks her to dance. And there's a lovely scene with them dancing around John's dingy flat and she's singing along. Absolutely lovely.
With sepia tones and, it was a really nice scene.
And then Mrs. Lemensky curtsies at the end to John.
Aww.
And he puts the record back in the sleeve and gives it to her. And then she insists he must come for Christmas dinner. John starts to protest. Obviously, he's now made his mind up that he's going to Wendy's. But she's basically saying, I never eat Christmas dinner. In fact, I always eat alone. And John's like, John wants to bonk. Fucking hell. I'm back on Sun Journalist talk again.
No one said bonk for about 25 years.
Fucking bonk. Oh. He wants to go and give her one.
If the thought of that could have been made any worse, it was with the addition of the word bonk. Ugh, yuck. Oh, it's work.
Anyways, but John decides, doesn't he, because Mrs. Lemensky's so insistent, she doesn't want to be alone. He knows it's the right thing to do, and he's always guided by his moral compass, so he decides he won't bonk Wendy.
Yeah, don't bonk Wendy.
No bonking. And there's one final gag, as Mrs. Lemensky says, John reminds her of Branislav. He was a rotten dancer as well.
Oh. I thought that was going to go in a way that made me feel a bit uncomfortable, but it didn't.
You think she was going to ram her tongue down his throat, did you?
I thought that she might take advantage of John, but she doesn't.
No bonking.
No bonking. Nope. Just dancing, and he's a bad dancer at that.
And the episode and the series and the show ends.
Yeah.
Seems we've sung love's last song, dear John.
I don't know what to say, because it wasn't a very satisfactory ending for me. I know it was the end of, even as a Christmas special, with the thought that it might continue, it just felt very, I don't know.
Well, I think it's a bit like some of his other work in that the protagonists are tryhards, but it never quite works out for them. And I think, given this wasn't written as an ending to the entire thing, it's like, and also the protagonists generally tend to do the right thing.
Yeah.
So I thought it was a sweet ending because of the decision he made, and also I enjoyed the fact that Wendy didn't get her own way.
Yes.
But obviously, because it never comes back, the unanswered questions around John and Wendy, Kirk and Kate, and for me the big thing is the Kirk versus Eric identity. You just want to see that play out more. Look, I think we said in previous episodes that it would surprise us if John Sullivan hadn't had more stories involving this duality of Kirk to come. And none of it gets resolved. And where the fuck is Mrs. Arnott?
Yeah, she never came back from looking after her grandchildren.
So yeah.
God, yeah.
And where's Tosh from the bill? It's so many unanswered questions.
There must be. Do you think there's some fan fiction somewhere deep in the internet and that carry on this tale? Because I feel like I need to find out.
Well, if any listeners want to write us some brief, must underline the word brief, and non-sexual fan fiction. We'll read it in the next episode.
I want to know what happens.
If it's any good. I mean, if it's fucking awful, we won't. But if it's any good and you want to write it. Because we are going to do one more on this sort of Dear John thing, as we alluded to earlier. The other thing I wanted to say about this final episode is that Sheila Manahan, who played Kirk's mum, the character that you hated, she died only a few weeks after this episode aired.
Is that right?
It's a bit like the Lord Melbury situation. He died shortly after that one aired. Oh, right, okay. This was her last screen appearance, and she was married to Fulton Mackay, who played... I've got blanked. Do you know what I mean? Don't you, in Porridge? The main prison guard in Porridge.
Yes, I do.
Mr. Mackay.
Yeah.
I don't know why I blanked, because the guy's name was Fulton Mackay.
Maybe that's what threw you. He had the same name in real life.
Yeah, must be. I was thinking, that can't be it.
Okay.
Yeah. But she was married to Fulton Mackay, who had also died just shortly before this had filmed. What? So they followed each other quite quickly.
Oh, there you go.
And that's that. Did you get any bric-a-brac in this final one?
I did. There was the record player that I alluded to earlier, because it reminded me of the one that we had to buy to play my granddad's records.
Of course.
That sort of box thing, and it was like everything. The turntable was in there, the speakers were in there, the lid was in there. It was all like a one-unit piece. There was an upturned fruit box on top of the wardrobe as well. That I know you can still get boxes with company names on the side of them, but it just stuck out as being of the time. The lettering, the colour, it was all very 1987.
That's been there all the way through the series, you know that?
Has it really?
Yeah.
I only spotted it in this episode.
I nearly picked it myself, but I couldn't quite make out what it said on it.
It was Zirkas, which I think I did do a quick Google, and I think it's an Australian fruit company. So there you go.
Must have been having a lovely dinner.
I bet, yeah. Chopped up peaches and cheese.
Yep, lovely. I didn't. I just forgot, sorry. Didn't do my job this week. I was just too distracted by the emotion of the episode.
Yeah.
We'll leave the MVP to last, I think. Shall we have a little trip to Fashion Corner first?
Yes, let's do that.
Whatever happened to those clothes we wore? It seems we never wear those clothes no more. Fashion Corner.
So the start of Fashion Corner this week, the singers that turn up at John's door right at the beginning of the episode in the first scene, singing Christmas carols, they are, I think we assume that they're both skinheads dressed in the olive green nylon MA1 bomber jackets with orange lining. I think we've mentioned these before. These are jackets that were issued to the US military in the 1950s so that they could be worn inside out, so that if anybody needed to be found, the orange of the inside of the jacket was like, it caught people's eye, and people could be rescued, like especially in like rescue missions. They both had these jackets on. You can still get them today. I quite like that look, that aesthetic, and I think I remember kids at school in the 80s having these coats as well. Sylvia, we see her later in this episode in a blue dress with like an Aztec theme, in black, and a black headband. She always wears a lot of headbands, I think, Sylvia, doesn't she?
She does, actually, yeah. She always, maybe a flower sometimes, or...
Yeah, she's always adorned. Her head's always adorned with something. Eric in this episode, and I know that I did mention Eric's, the alter ego look that he had, which I said was quite an attractive look now, because it's like a bit of a hipstery, geeky look that was supposed to, in the 80s, look really dowdy and unattractive, which doesn't seem to work in 2022, I don't think. In this episode, the Eric character he's got different glasses on, which I think was supposed to look more geeky than last time. But I don't know, Peter Blake...
He's very handsome, he's very difficult
There's not much you can do to Peter Blake to make him look unattractive, I don't think.
I agree.
Green and mustard check jumper with a very pointed collared shirt, but it's still got that geeky chic look to it. It's hard to really find fault with it. The hair and the face is still the same. He's got like blue-grey slacks on. So yeah, the Eric look in this episode is slightly different to the last one, but it's still not an unattractive look, despite the fact that I think it was supposed to be. Wendy, when she comes to the door to see Toby off, she's in a red tartan dress with a black roll neck jumper underneath. Very Christmassy look about her. Louise in the pub when they're meeting to go for lunch. She's got like a white woolen coat on with huge buttons and a high collar, chunky gold necklaces which she does wear week in, week out, with a red blouse and black skirt. Very of the time. When Kate turns back up from Greece to meet them for lunch, she's I don't know, she's looking different, I think, with the hair and the tan, but she's got like a blue grey sweatshirt material top on with tiny polka dot details all over it. She's got permed hair now, which she didn't have when she left.
Yeah, that's true.
And it's like pulled back in that sort of 80s look of like clips in the sides. So you just clip the sides back with like these comb clips.
Yes.
So yeah, I thought she looked very cute. And obviously she's back from a Jollies and just looking out a little bit, I don't know.
Radiant.
A little bit just chilled, radiant and chilled out, I think. It's all like my taxa.
It must be.
And sex.
The sex might have helped.
Yeah.
That's the kind of guy I am.
Well then, I think that brings us to the MVP for this episode and for the entire series. So did you have one? For this episode, I mean.
I'm a little bit torn. I don't know which way to go on this, because Eric and Kirk, we have separated them out, haven't we, as two different characters.
We have, yeah.
And Eric made the brave decision to become Kirk to help his friends, but it was Kirk that did the helping in the end.
That's the problem with doing it. I mean, we can always treat them as the same character. Last time you voted for Eric, I could amalgamate that with the Kirk votes, if you like, because, I mean, it is the same guy.
I feel like it's the same person. The conscience is in there, isn't it? Of that one. Yeah. Do you know what? Can we do that? And okay. I'll put my vote forward for Kerrick.
For Kerrick?
Yes.
Now, I want to give it to Kerrick. But I feel like he made the wrong decision. That he should have just stuck up for his friends as Eric. Easy to say because, well, in fact, I mean, I wouldn't have done. I'd have scarpered her. I'll tell you now. I'd have been a coward.
Yeah, run
outside and find the nearest phone box and phone the police from it. I mean, yeah, he did help his friends out, but John's actions for Mrs. Lemensky win him the MVP from me, because I just thought it was so lovely what he did for Mrs. Lemensky. Both buying a record and having Christmas dinner with her. Just a good egg, as we always say. I know that you started having your doubts about John, but I don't know, by the time it finished, have you come round to thinking he's a good egg again?
My only reason for not picking John, because I totally agree with all that, was that I felt like it was a resentful decision that he made to have Christmas dinner with Mrs. Lemensky. I think he did it because he felt like he had to, rather than because he wanted to.
Well, yeah, but he didn't.
He still wanted to go and bonk Wendy.
He did want to bonk Wendy. He didn't have to. He could have just said, "I'm sorry, I've got plans."
I still felt that he's at the end. It was like, "Oh yeah, Merry Christmas," like as if, "Oh, I've got to go and do this now."
Okay,
that was my only reason for not giving it him.
Harsh, but I can understand Kerrick getting it as well.
Yeah.
Would you like me to give you the final scores then?
Yeah, go on.
In reverse order? We have 1 vote for Kate, 1 abstention. I refused to vote in one episode because no one impressed me. It's kind of like a hell of a indictment of Kate that she got the same amount of votes as an abstention.
As an abstention, yep.
Sylvia got 2 votes, despite only being in it in about 5 episodes or so.
Yeah.
Louise also got 2 votes. Mrs. Arnott got 3 votes.
Ooh.
Ralph got 4 votes. And then Kirk/Eric got 7 and John got 8.
Oh, well, there you go. That's okay, isn't it?
So my decision there was kind of, it all boiled down to that last decision, yeah.
Yeah, even with an abstention, I love that.
Even with the abstention, yeah.
I forgot about the abstention.
Yeah, I threw my toys out of the pram that day, didn't I? No one's getting it. So congratulations to John Lacey, who never wins at life, but he did when it comes to the MVP on our podcast.
Well, that's lovely.
Now then, I guess as this is the end of the series, people who listen at least and who are into this sort of, not only this series, but our previous series, will want to know what we're going to do next. Truth be told, we haven't really decided yet, have we?
No, it's a tricky one.
Does by all means still send us your suggestions as long as it's not Reggie Perrin.
Yeah, we tried. We really tried.
But I mean, prior to doing anything, we'll be taking a well-deserved break because we put a lot into this podcast. It takes up a hell of a lot of time and effort, doesn't it? So
for you it does. With all the editing, it definitely is.
Yeah, I mean, I enjoy it, but it's, you've got to view it, make notes, edit, all the promotion and stuff. So if you'd like to say thank you for this series and help us pay our bills, because we do have a few, you can make a one-off donation to us via our website at saddo.club. Help us keep going. You can also get in touch with us on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter. We're quite active on all those profiles, particularly, I think, probably primarily on both Twitter and the Facebook group page that we have, which is a growing community, and quite like people just to post their own contributions about any old sitcom really on there. If you join, just make it a nice little community hub, would be lovely. We'll still be posting stuff about Dear John and Faulty and The Good Life while we're not making podcasts for the next few months. There is, however, as we alluded to, one more Dear John themed episode that we'll do based on the US version of Dear John. We're calling it Shallow Dive, aren't we, Al? Yeah.
I think it'll, for us to do that and it be the American version, I think it'd just be nice to see it and to share that with people that have followed us throughout this series, just to compare the differences and see and the similarities as well.
Yeah, we're not quite sure when that's going to pop up and when we're going to record it.
Yeah.
But hopefully it'll be a nice surprise when it pops into your podcast app at some point over the next few weeks or months. And then eventually we'll be back with Series 4. And I guess the only last thing to say, other than I'll see thee, which I will say shortly, if I beat you to doing it, is that I don't think we mentioned it before explicitly, and maybe we did on the Will Bates. Yeah, we did on the Will Bates episode, but the Ralph Bates Pancreatic Cancer Research Fund in Ralph Bates' memory exists, and they do great work and they accept donations. And I think if you don't want to give us a donation, or you're tempted to give us a donation but you also want to give a donation to that, we're quite happy if you just give the money
to do that.
Yeah, because Ralph Bates was a most underrated actor and he gave us some great laughs and great moments in this show, and we've loved to deep dive in it. That's about it. And it's a bit of a downer to leave it on, though, isn't it? Eh?
I know.
Fucking hell. Shall I just say bonk one more time?
Please.
Bonk. Instead of I'll see thee, just bonk.
Leave it on that.
Go forth and bonk like Kate did in Greece.
Enjoy the Metaxa.
Bye.